Good morning, Namibia and the world, and welcome once again here to another session here at the Government Information Center. My name is Desire Kahir, and I will be captaining this particular session for you. As we always say that we want to inform people, we want to keep information flowing to the nation so that we are all on par. It's a good thing to actually educate the next person. And a lot of these sessions, even for myself as I'm sitting here, become educative platforms. So thus today we decided to invite the National Arts Council of Namibia into the studio, and we have their board chairperson, that is Ms. Sisley Jacobs. Good morning, and thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Good morning to everyone.
I think what's refreshing about this whole session today, it's the fact that we've got a young person. Yes. We've got a young person in a vibrant industry, and I think it's one of those that we sometimes find the disconnect, where you have an industry that attracts a lot of young people, yet we don't necessarily have the youth in the leadership. So kudos to that. Thank you for taking up the position, if we could put it that way.
Yes.
Let's jump into it, and we would like to find out from you, what is the primary mandate of the National Arts Council of Namibia, and how does it align with the theme, Arts and Culture, a Public Good?
Well, thank you very much. Yes, I found myself as appointed as a council member, and just to address the issue of youth representation till today, I find it quite interesting that most of my board members are a little bit older than myself, and that was interesting when I became chair, but let's not sidetrack that conversation, but rather speak on the mandate of the National Arts Council. It's really primarily founded in the National Arts Fund Act of 2005, and this really sets out the purpose, the vision, and the objectives of what the National Arts Council ought to be taking care of, which is primarily to promote and develop arts and culture in Namibia. And I think the idea of public good is embedded in it because it's a national institution. It was set up for this purpose, and so we cannot speak about arts and culture without acknowledging the social, economic, and value that it has. And so for everybody, and particularly now that it is an election year, it is really important that the constituents, all of us Namibian citizens, talk to our representatives politically to address this issue, because it is something that has economic, social, and cultural value for us. It is our heritage, it's our national identity, and so it is a public good. This is why there is an international and national institutions that were established for these purposes. So yeah, the theme fits right into its mandate. Yeah.
It is actually a very perfect fit, if I can put it that way. Thank you for that very informative, yet it's short but highly informative clarity there. What are some of the key successes or milestones that the NACN has achieved in promoting arts and culture as a public good?
Well, I'm actually quite pleased since this Arts Council had been instituted. A lot had been done, but this council specifically has done so much in just the last 2 years. And of course, before you even go outside coloring in the outside lines, you have to deal with the mandate first, which is specifically the promotion and development of arts and culture in Namibia, which means there are specific duties that we have, objectives of bursaries. So this is another importance of the public good element, that we teach our young and youth in the ways of careers in arts and culture, right? And then grant programs, right? This is financial resources given to artistic projects, initiatives, programs, and even institutions. You just have to simply apply. We will get into that a little bit later. And then we have mobility funding. So this means if an artist wants to, an art or a cultural practitioner has been invited to maybe an international festival or residency, we will take care of your transport basically. So air fare, your travel insurance and such. So mobility is very important. How do you get there? And then the good old-fashioned sponsorship and partnership. We have a lot of great key stakeholders and institutions and calendar events that we are part of and that are very pivotal to the work we do at the Arts Council. But of course, we have other initiatives. And so these are the main ones. And so, for example, we've had for the first time last year the National Literature Festival. And so reading is important, right? We understand that we are in the swipe and video world, but at the end of the day, reading and writing is still important. Yeah. We have partnered up with the Matesa Star Competition, who they have just gone from stride to stride. Of course, Jazz Festival is a huge calendar event that we love very much. Yeah. And then we have also decentralized into the regions, the trade fairs, the Nama Festival, for example. And so these are very important ways in which we are also looking at strategy. And so it is important, although that we have our initiatives, that we maintain doing the core primary focus functions of the Arts Council. And we just have strategies around that. Bursaries or grants, we just look at, is there broad impact? Is there social, effect that it has? Does it address social ills? Is it sustainable long term as a project? Yeah. Can this be something you do annually? We ask these sort of questions. And so, yeah, that is very important strategy, but as I said, before we go outside of the board, we must first deal with the primary functions. Yeah. That is very important.
I think I would really love to applaud the fact that you looked at whether it's a board or as a council. You look at a lot of spheres where people were struggling in the past. One would really applaud them for that. Looking at things like your traveling fare. Covering somebody's travel fare and so on to go to these various festivals. I think that is one of the biggest issues that they had in the past as artists. That's great. So who are you inviting for the Jazz Festival?
Well, it depends.
I think that's one of the big questions right now. Everybody is anxious about that one.
I cannot say that yet, and of course the date hasn't been announced too. Yeah. But another key success, which is a sort of legal advancement we are making, because currently we are working on this National Arts Fund Act of 2005, because 2005, it's basically been 20 years, and so we are looking at updating that law, so we are really busy with that. We've also introduced regional consultations and advocacy sessions, and we've been in small to big cities or like towns, villages, settlements, communities. We've done at least 4 over the last 2 years. And so accessibility, visibility, and information sharing has been very important to this council. Yeah.
Speaking of the 2005 Act is what you referred to right now. My next question then goes into the drafting of the new regulations and a National Arts Council bill that the council is busy with. Maybe you can just assist us with explaining the key objectives of this draft bill. And also in the same vein, I would like to then grasp the challenges that the NACN has been facing under the current framework and how this new draft bill proposes to address these challenges.
Thank you. So as I'm saying, it's quite an old law. And so the first reason we looked at finding funding and obviously also moving to the minister to lobby for this law to be changed was legal cohesion, right? And so compliance, not just with the internal structures of the law itself, but its legal status. This was one of the issues that we were facing. So as much as the council had been an operational body, it was in this weird, and it still is kind of in this weird legal gray area, right? Whether or not we are doing the functions and the mandate of it, but whether or not you can be taken to court is another matter, right? Can the Namibian people hold us accountable? Yeah. That's an important issue. So we were concerned with fixing that legal coherence and compliance. And the next one really is about the operational and governance structure of the National Arts Council. So currently, we have only seconded staff. So the National Arts Council does not employ staff, right? And so this act or this draft bill and regulations are setting up a new organizational structure. And from the regional consultations that we did in June, July, we found that, of course, this was something we were looking at from my perspective as a lawyer. It was interesting because there's this question of decentralization. Everything is so focused in commerce and in Windhoek. And so we were looking at how can we decentralize not just the operational structure, but also the governance structure, both from decision making and also administration, right? And so this is another issue that we are looking at that is trying to be addressed. We have different models. Again, election year. At the end of the day, even after we do this draft bill, and so we have to give it to the National Assembly, and the Parliament will debate it, and this is where you are important. It's a public good at the end of the day. And so the financial resource can only work best if there is an efficient structure pulling it both strategically and administratively, both centrally and decentralized in all government regions, so that everybody has access to these financial resources. Yeah.
Wow, well put.
Yeah, and then of course, last one is expanding the funding avenue. So we are trying to find innovative ways in which we can raise more funding, because our main funder is the government, of course, but investment, other ways in which we can raise funding, and then adapting to digital technologies. This is an important factor. Modernizing the law. How do we look at digital media, this content creation sort of movement that has started, and it will not end. And so we also have AI now. This will affect the way the artist and cultural practitioner works. And so we have to accommodate these things. And so these are all the key objectives and the challenges around those objectives that we are addressing in the draft bill and regulations.
One just hopes that AI does not necessarily move us away from the art in its traditional form. I think that is also another thing that one debates with when it comes to digitalization. It's like the old and the new when you're trying to teach an elderly person how to use a cell phone type of situation, I think, where they still believe in your traditional ways of communicating, where they still want to visit somebody, yet they can do it through a phone. So I think this is where the new and the old needs to now find a balance. I would then like to stay with your legislation side of things and how it impacts the cultural practitioner and the artist, and what benefits can they expect from it?
Very well. This is the thing, right? So we need to find the balance to address the first, to link it to the first question is, how do we create a cohesion between traditional art forms and the digital space? Now, we will always be people. Of course, we will always live in the 3D material world, and we will always love to go to live events, see things in person. But we must also acknowledge that there is this new form of media and art form. And so the classical arts will also need to be adapted into this. And so the biggest benefits that I perceive to be evident from this draft bill and regulations are the fact that there will be an expanded finance and support to the cultural practitioner, right? And so because of expanding not only the definitions, but looking at arts and culture not as just some philosophical or even a public good, but rather assets, it's services. And so looking at it also from this economic definition of what a public good is, right? And so we are trying to give it that value. And so the benefit for the arts and cultural practitioner would be this recognition firstly, and then the expanded finance scoping, not just with the amounts that would be received, but also in the different mediums and disciplines of arts and culture. Another one that is important is this decentralization. And so that means there will be more representation for the local and regional artists that are not necessarily in the capital, that they have a voice that is stronger and that has some ability to move strategy and decision making for the council. And so the governance and operational structure models we are looking into in the draft bill to address this representation element that everybody has access, right? And then, of course, digital technology. So there is more content creation happening. Most things, even though, of course, we are speaking about this balance that we are trying to work out, we need to address it because this is a different avenue for our arts and cultural practitioners to not just have access, but also exposure and royalties, the sort of recompense that comes from sharing information to a global market, because not everything can just stay in Namibia. We are now part of a global economy, and so these are some of the benefits that we are looking at for the practitioners. And of course, also expanding the scope of the actual programs that are in the mandate of the Arts Council. Like, for example, what sort of criteria are we looking at for bursary? Which are the key areas we look right now in strategy, the demands and the needs of the industry, but this needs to continue to be flexibly addressed in the regulations themselves. So I think those are some of the immediate benefits that the artists will see from this draft bill and regulations.
Expanding on what you just elaborated right now, one would then want to find out what does or how does the NACN then collaborate with local artists, cultural practitioners. It's the first time I hear that terminology, though, but I'm loving it, and other stakeholders to promote artistic growth and cultural sustainability. I think that is the key there, actually, when it comes to all of these efforts, the sustainability of it all.
All right, so like I said, there are these specific programs that we have with the Arts Council. So the first one is the education part, right? And so we're not only looking at tertiary education in its NQA sense, but also vocational and also college, right? TVET systems. And so this is about not everybody necessarily has the academic acumen, right? And so that is important. So we are looking at the demands right now, or even those that are not existing. Like, we don't have curators, we do not have sort of artist management. You know, there are different areas that we have looked at. And so right now, those are the priority fields we have identified for the bursaries, right? And so that continues to change based on what is necessary at the time. With grants, we have also, initially it used to be just one a year, which was quite not a way to actually create a sustainable and continuously working creative sector and environment and ecosystem. And so now we have 3 cycles in the year. So beginning quarter of the year, halfway through, and then end. And so that, again, these grants are for different artistic projects, right? And so this is how we collaborate and fund. Sometimes we add ourselves to a program if it is particularly very direct to, like, sort of outsourcing our own mandate. Then we're like, this is very cool, so let's do this with this, and maybe we can add more funding to it and make it a bigger thing. But so the grant system is also there, not just for the youth, but also for more older people, which are more crafts and cultural goods oriented, right? And so we collaborate like that. We also like to, if institutions or festivals or trade fairs apply for funding for partnerships and sponsorships, we like to ask this question of impact to the immediate community that you have there. Who are the artists? And we always pay for the artists. This is what we do, for example, the Jazz Festival, or even the Namibia Creative Summit that just took place in September. And so these are some of our core basically partners, like, for example, the NTN. We always cover the artist and the cultural practitioners course. And so whenever, even if we are not directly working with the artists, we make sure that their fees are taken care of. So, and of course, our own initiatives, whenever we have, even if it's a good old-fashioned panel discussion, we like to invite some artists to come and perform. Because it's not just the social and the economic or the cultural value, but it's this entertainment, aesthetics, the beauty.
Yes.
We should not forget that these things lift our souls. And so, yes, this is how we like to collaborate with the artistic and creative sort of practitioner.
I don't know whether we will find any other answers besides what you've already given us, but I want to poke the bear even further. Sure. Away from the initiatives that you just gave us now, are there any other projects that the NACN is undertaking to support or to further support the creative industry and empower artists in Namibia?
All right. And so this one is interesting because, first of all, the biggest one project is this National Arts Fund draft bill and regulations, because it will have long-term effect on the industry. This is a creative policy, and so although it is largely around the funding question, and so maybe there will be other laws that come into place to address this issue. But then we are also currently underway with our rebranding, and so this is important. We need to look youthful and also well, not trendy, but timeless, but to also address the identity, the national identity and the cultural heritage of Namibia that should be reflected in the identity, right? And so of the Arts Council itself. And so we are busy with that. We will be launching that soon. There are some other projects, for example, I will not say exactly what it is, but we understand that recognition is also an important element of creating a conducive environment that inspires the next artists and creatives to go on and do their thing, because if you are recognized, there is another reward element that is beyond economic value, that is more morale-based, right? Yes. And also status. Let's not forget these things are important. If you are doing a great job, you must be recognized for it. And so we are looking into a project for that specifically. We will announce it soon too. There are a few more, but the biggest ones that we are very, very concerned with decentralizing. And so we are doing a lot more projects in local and regional spaces now and supporting those. And so we are everywhere basically right now. We are going to, if there is a small event even happening in, whether it's in Ngurukuru, we will be there, and so on. So we have a lot of projects coming on. Of course, there are ones that we have partnered with too, right? And so I can't speak on a lot of those, but there is the main ones are how do we look at it long term? So what sort of projects are those? And that one is why the law review project is very important. How do we look as a brand? How accessible are we? How do we engage with our stakeholders? And how do we recognize our artistic and cultural practitioners, because they are really the heritage evolvers, right? And they are the ones that make sure that our culture does not die out, even if it is evolving at all times.
Very true. Very, very, very true. I think the latter of what you just stated now is the key that should be driving a lot of our creative efforts when it comes to sustaining these artists, because we want to make sure that there is knowledge transfer as well. So hopefully some of the projects that the council is busy with focuses on that, and not necessarily just education in the sense of teaching somebody how to, but also giving that background within that teaching so that the next person can understand what it is that they're supposed to be holding dear and, channeling through to the next one. But you've got my curiosity bug now running with these projects.
But let me quickly add something, because that is a huge important objective we are adding. Beyond the purpose of the Arts Council, which is promote and develop, we have now added preserve also, which is important.
Very good.
But in the objectives, we have also added this capacity building and training and skills transfer. It's a very key way in which we do not have to address it through a formal education system, but through just normal apprenticeship, right? Workshops and capacity building seminars and training. And so this is huge for us. We have, of course, been doing this as Arts Council initiatives themselves, particularly around the labor law and the decent work conversation, social security, and then also around royalties and those sort of rights. And so, and then of course, how do the actual skills of, for example, how do you paint and how do you do the crafts basket, or how do you teach someone about sound technology, for example, at the background of this studio. You know, these are all adding to the bigger picture of the industry, or the sector, rather. I would like to use the word sector because industry needs something much more, particularly around this public good argument and debate, because industry needs different levels of systems to be in place. And I would not describe the Namibian industry as of the creative and cultural as an industry, but rather a sector. But we need to work towards this industry, right? And Arts Council is simply just another cog in it, a financial cog largely, but one that has advocacy, policy, and lobbying ability too. These are other functions that we have to look into. Yeah.
And I think what you know, the elements that you just stated now, you know, the finances, the legislation, the laws, the bills, the what that the NACN is busy with, I think it's one of the driving factors that would actually assist us to get to that bigger picture of turning it into an industry and moving it away from the sector. I think it's a moving thing. It's one of those like a living thing, constant thing. It keeps evolving, keeps moving, and bodies like yourselves are the ones that we need to constantly keep that momentum going. As our time is running out from underneath us with this discussion, I love the vibrancy of it. I would be amiss if I do not ask Ms. Jacobs this last question that we have to her on how can the public engage with the NACN.
NACN, right? Yes. Yeah, it is.
How can they engage with your efforts, and what platforms or opportunities exist for collaboration in promoting? I think for me that's very important, promoting the arts and culture.
Well, very well. So the first one is the normal platform. So of course directly in person, and so I would say in person ones are at the office. So this is at the National Government Park here, and in is it Eros or Independence Avenue? But it's Luther Street, right?
Yes.
And so it is in the Ministry of Education, Arts and Culture building. And so there you can physically go to have a conversation with the National Arts Council's Secretariat, right? Then there is the other way in which has been speaking about the regional advocacy work we've been doing. And so now we are not just asking you to come to us, we are going to you. And so we have these regional advocacy sessions. We are working a lot with the regional arts officers and cultural officers and officers themselves. So they are also a part of the decentralized system that is going to be built, we believe. And so these regional advocacy sessions, we are always trying to communicate both through NBC, television and radio programs whenever we are in a specific area. And then, of course, indirectly and digitally on social media platforms. We are on Facebook, and so it's the National Arts Council of Namibia is the page name. We also have the nationalartscouncil.org website, so you can go and find information there, how to apply for grants, for bursaries, for mobility funding, how do you become a partner, or how do we become a sponsor for your event, and so on. And so that place is also where you will find other resources, for example, international resources, whether or not it's UNESCO, for example, who has funded this Ashburg program, who has funded the National Arts Fund's Law Review, which, because obviously it would not have been done this quickly if we had taken the normal route, but because, you know, money talks. Yes, and so these are all the other partners we have also linked up there so that you can find other resources there. And so, yeah, we are always open to communicate and to share the information and to have the best, and sometimes it's not always the best artistic acumen, but also how do you provide a sort of cohesion and community space for the people around you. It may not be something particularly original or novel, but how is it shaping the space that you live in? Because before you go out and try to clean everything else up, let's start at home and in your own community, and let's have those conversations there. And so those conversations we want to share with you. We will also have a lot more live sort of conversations happening. And let me not forget, another way you can have a conversation about this law review is next week from the 8th to the 11th. We have panel discussions. This is another process in the lawmaking, which is public validation workshops. And so come through, come say your say, and let's hear your stronger and inclusive voice.
Yeah. As we round off and we give you the opportunity to give us your last remarks, we'd also just like for you to give us a few details on the law review. Where will it be taking place? What are the hours? Do people need to RSVP, or is it walk-ins? Yeah, and so forth.
All right, so this will be, it's a public validation panel discussion. So there are specific people that are obviously institutions, that stakeholders that we need to invite. But what is important is that the public, it is a law that will govern you, and so it is important that you are involved in it. So it will be, more information will certainly be shared on social media platforms. So check out Facebook, particularly from today onwards, for the official sort of communication to the public. But it is from the 8th to the 11th, every day from 10 to 12 o'clock. Okay. We will address a specific matter each day, because it's quite a big and broad sort of law, not in its actual form, but the nature of the things that we need to address. And so, yes, that is, I think, the most important part right now. Obviously, you can also look at the law and then just send an email. Okay. This will be part of what we put as support to when we make the submission to the Parliament, right? Okay. Yeah, so even if you may not be physically at the thing, or even virtually, you can still send in written, whether it's just criticisms, review itself of the law, maybe suggestions, strategies, whatever you think is best that would work for you. Because this is the interesting thing about Namibia that I found when we traveled 14 regions is we have so many tribes and so many languages and culture. It was interesting finding a definition for culture, or trying to at least, and because one culture and or tribe and the language there, and so we need to agree on some things that we need to find a consensus on, and so we do not go far into the ether, right? So that we are structured and tethered, and that there is always culture, but attached to artistic expression too, so that we do not also open the Pandora's box, which was the funniest thing in some of the regions we went to. And so anyway, this is the point, is to just, if you still have some information you want to share about the bill and the regulations, you can submit them via email at the nacn@gmail.com.
Well said. There you have it. Please be part of the process. Let's not say that we never knew. We were informed. Closing off, what would you like to part the nation with?
Well, I mean, you know, the idea that arts and culture is such an outside thing is always boggles my mind. We are it. We are an expression of it, particularly when it comes to culture. And so what is important is that we understand this, and that we give it its sort of mental, because even the artistic or cultural practitioner does feel and has this feeling that it is the last thought. It is a public good. It's something we run to look at during COVID, for example. And so once you at home and in your offices and as financial resources go, or as partners or sponsors, institutions, whether you are attached to arts and culture or not, it is a mindset issue. And so if you start to understand that it is a mindset issue and that we need to change that sort of philosophy around how we perceive the sector, it would start to create its own ecosystem. You spoke about something that happens naturally or organically and that is ever changing, and this is the case. And this is why it is a public good. And so let's look at it from that perspective so that we can grow the institutions, grow the individuals, and grow an industry that we can so name once.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That is Ms. Sisley Jacobs. you know when you come into sessions like these, you get to learn how to pronounce and spell, and you encounter new names, and Sisley was a new one for me. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
You taught me something new as well. I think as we round off here, we just reminded that arts is our history. It is our heritage, and it is one of the forms in which we transfer who we are to the next generation. So let's be part of it. Let's all, play our part in making sure that our heritage is preserved and it is sustainable and it is, transferred properly to the next generation. From myself, Desire Kahia, and my MICT crew here, it is bye-bye for now, but please do join us next week for another Cabinet Committee briefing. That will be Monday at 10 o'clock. Bye-bye.
Oh, thank you.